king. James, we've got to at one point talk to you about your artwork, I think, and how that links with faith. That would be really interesting. So yeah, we're just a couple of guys talking about faith as honestly, as deeply as we can, trying not to be judgmental or not step into the traps of judging or shaming, but just trying to be authentic with this, about an experience that's really powerful and really part of our identities, and I'm sure part of many others. And not trying to give spiritual answers or convince anyone. We're just sharing, and trying to go deep. And I think that's the most powerful thing we can do with this sort of thing, James. So I've been really valuing our conversations, really loving having a space where we can just talk and just think about it and grapple with it and try to put words to some of the struggles we have and some of the kind of way that we're finding through these questions that it brings. And so last week we were talking a lot about judgment, and the weeks before we were talking about kind of our progress and our journey in our faith, and ideas of surrender as well in week 2. And yeah, what really struck me, James, from last week, and we didn't really touch on it, was how kind of linking what we've been talking about together a bit, how judgment can stop us from maybe moving on spiritually or kind of journeying on in our faith. It can kind of keep us in our place and keep us kind of quite restricted.
Yes, stunt our spiritual growth to an extent, or just us, our being.
Yeah, and I think it does both. Especially when you think of if we bring God into the equation and kind of something so fundamental, and I think spirituality is something so fundamental to who we are. I think a sense of spiritual judgment or judgmentalism within our spiritual side or our faith side is really going to stunt us, and really going to have an impact could well have an impact on us. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, or if I should roll a bit more with that, James.
Yeah. Feel free. There, I've got a few thoughts, but carry on. I'd love to hear what you've got to say about it.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I was thinking was a few things really. I think one thing, maybe from my experience, is how we get quite fearful. We could get quite fearful about other ideas of spirituality, and that can kind of drive us into our own heritage, if you like, or our own lineage in spirituality, which I mean can be great to go down deep into, and there's a lot of wisdom I think there. I also think it blocks us off to some of the wisdom that perhaps slightly different streams or very different heritages have. And they kind of act as a mirror on our own, I think, as a mirror of kind of what's maybe a bit distorted in our own, or maybe overemphasized or underemphasized. And I think I found that really helpful, just kind of stepping a bit away from it and just thinking, actually, no, it's okay, Tom. I don't need to live in that fear of judgment. Stepping out of that and then being able to see what maybe other religions or other different streams of Christianity or just different spiritualities where people come from, what they are saying about us, or what they're seeing, or what's really important to them. And it just, I think I feel much more widened in that. And it's funny, I always thought I'd be threatened by it. I think growing up, I always thought, this would be like they threaten my convictions, or they threaten my faith. And I found something different. It's really enlivened it, I think, more and broadened it out. So yeah, I think that's where I'd start with my musings or my.
I really love that, and actually, I'm really glad that you've gone there and started from that place, because I've got a kind of an anecdote from earlier on in my faith kind of along those lines. It must have been about 7 or so years. I always give like a time frame that's completely irrelevant because I have actually got no idea when this was. But I watched the
It
film.
makes it sound like it's a fact, James, that you've not made it up.
It does, doesn't it? Gives it credence. All of a sudden, like I put a date on it or put a time on it. But my memory's definitely not that good. I had a time when I watched a film called Finger of God, which I really enjoyed. Really, really good film about miracles and kind of a lot of stuff that's going on nowadays and in and around the world. You know, quite often in the Western culture, we have quite a scientific approach and a rational approach to miracles, and they're like, oh well, there's obviously a reason for that, or there's like explanations that are natural rather than supernatural. So this was like exploring the supernatural, and it was from a very, very Christian, very kind of like middle America sort of Christian experience. So that's where the people who were doing it, very super evangelical, very revivalist, very charismatic movement. So real belief in the spirit, real belief in not a cessationist by that, like, you know, believing that the Holy Spirit no longer works nowadays. So this is a really powerful film, and in it, as part of it, there was a short section that really stuck in my mind at the time, and also subsequently, and on reflection, it sort of came up a little bit more, and it was about them looking at other religions, particularly Hinduism and Buddhism, and there was like quite a derogatory tone isn't quite right, but very much a like them and us mentality there, and a kind of a demonization of these other faiths, particularly of Hinduism, where there was a particular element that they picked out and said, isn't this horrendous? And it stuck with me because I was like, that's from the Bible. That what's going on there, that happens in the Bible, that used to happen in the Bible. And what it is in the Hindu culture, it doesn't happen so much anymore, but maybe about 50 years ago or so, they would have a feast, and as part of that feast, the family or group of families would come together. One of the patriarchs or leaders of the family would talk to everybody. They would have a goat that was going to be part of their feast, and as part of the ritual and the ceremony, the spiritual practice, they would speak the sins of the family into the goat's ear, and that goat would then take on the sins of the family. They would then slaughter that goat, and that would be their feast, and it would be like an absolution, an absolving of their sins. And in my head, I was like, oh my goodness, that's scapegoating. That happened in like Israeli culture and in early Jewish culture in like the Old Testament. I remember I'd read about this in probably in Genesis or Exodus, one of the two, and just thinking, oh wow, that isn't that amazing? But the tone of this film was, isn't this a barbaric practice that's so like demonic and far removed from God? And I was like, no, not at all. And it kind of helped me at the time to start questioning and start reflecting on my own hard and fast rules that I had in my head of, this is okay, this is not okay, this is black, this is white, this is good, this is bad, and right and wrong, and these judgment lines, these rigidities that were set up, and helped me to kind of like, I mean, they were wavery anyway. They weren't that rigid for me anyway, in some respects. Others were, and it has taken a long time for those to melt, I suppose, and for me to start to allow those to crumble and be comfortable with them crumbling as well. There's a lot of stuff there, but in doing so, it kind of helped me open my eyes a little bit as you were saying, to other faiths, to other streams of thought, other approaches, and other other religions, to seeing actually what do we share, what do we share as fundamentals. And when you come down to it, and what Jesus talks about is that the greatest commandments are love and love, right? Love God, love others. And when you love somebody, again, I can never get away from this passage. Like the best description of love being from 1 Corinthians 13, which we're super familiar with from weddings, but a bit of a weird place to read it. But still, I'm glad we get it read. It's love is patient, love is kind, it's not self-seeking, it's not, and all of these, like what love is like and what love is. And that being a way of being and a personality and a way of approaching things and approaching people and approaching ourselves and approaching God. When we do that with anything in mind, and we have this real positive intent, this real, like, whatever's being done, I'm not judging it, I'm being patient with it, I'm being patient with them, I'm being patient with me, I'm being patient with the process, whatever. I'm being kind, I'm believing kindness is at the root of this and is at the root of me and my approach, and hopefully at the root of everything else if love is in and amongst all of us. And I mean, I'm mixing my metaphors and drawing on doctrine from left, right, and centre. God being love and whatnot, and God being in and through all of us, which may or may not be a completely Christian approach, but whatever. You can see I'm a bit of a mixed bag. So all of that, it kind of helped me to go, and it open up the doors and open up the windows and just let new. Not even new, because it is old wisdom, it's ancient wisdom that's there, that is older than time, that is older than us, and it's older than belief and thought and all of this stuff it's there, it's in the fibre of things, to seep in and to go, well, if that's what they're doing in a culture that is removed by continents, and they're doing it almost simultaneously at like in vastly different cultures and in different like settings with different impacts and cultural impacts and influences going on around them, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there is a deeper thing that's going on, like Aslan says, I was there when the law was written, when the older knowledge, when the knowledge before these old laws, and it just kind of gets me. It got me to a place where I suppose the opposite of putting yourself in a seat of judgment is humility, and I hesitate to use that because I know that I'm not like I very easily fall into that place of judgment and go, they don't know what they're talking about, or that's not how it really is. But like it helps with that. It helps to go, I don't hold all of the cards. I haven't got like an exclusive, the only route to truth, the only route to knowledge or wisdom. That a God who is deeply involved and deeply caring about every single life on the planet and in the universe is going to use all means necessary and all means at their disposal, which are going to be vast, to communicate, to get in touch, to reduce guilt, reduce shame, reduce judgment, increase love and kindness and generosity and compassion. So it just makes me think there is more going on here than I've got access to. It's just that the access I've got is through the lens of a Western, predominantly white Christian perspective, very middle class, very sort of like rationalist, very sort of like there's that Greek background of like fitting things into boxes and stuff. So with that in mind, when we can start to see our lens end on rather than through it, and go, hang on a sec, there were a few flaws here, or maybe that's not the complete image. Maybe we're seeing things through the lens of something else. Then that helps us to grow, I think, and to take a more humble stance on all of these things.
I love that. I love that idea of looking at the lens rather than just always looking through it. That's really powerful. And I think it comes from a place of humility. That like you need humility to step back and think, okay, how's my lens doing?
Right.
How is it?
And recognizing we've got our own unconscious biases, and that because they're unconscious, we don't know what they are.
And you don't look at them, so you just assume them.
And
I think that's
something.
kind of what I was trying to get to was, you know, when you try and expose yourself and experience other broader spiritualities, you do end up seeing your assumptions, and
see
you
yourself
can then
through someone else's lens or someone else's lens.
and then you can start evaluating them, you know, and actually you find some are a bit rubbish, but you would never have known, and actually you could say some are a bit unbiblical when you look and things. And the other thing that struck me when you were talking was how different that is from a worldview judgment or a judgmental worldview. I think I'm thinking of like it's easy, I think, maybe in conservative Christian kind of, or charismatic or fundamentalist or getting that way Christianities, we can see stream is where the Holy Spirit's working. Our stream is in here, Holy Spirit's there. Everywhere else isn't, the Holy Spirit's not there. And it's a mixture of the devil working lies, and it's a mixture of ourselves that are prone to deception, full of lust, or you know, full of whatever that's prone to take us down the wrong path. And yours is just kind of breaking that and actually, you know, infusing and suffusing the Spirit everywhere, as a kind of
recognizing that truth isn't exclusive. That truth isn't an exclusive gift to these one people. Truth is everywhere. That like so for me, like one of the big fundamentals of my own belief that I haven't. That even in all of the process of deconstruction, I've always come back to is truth being a person, and the person being Jesus. And so, if truth is a person and the person is Jesus, then the ability for a person and the ability for God to love and to accept and to be in and work through people is so beyond my comprehension that I can't. There isn't room for me to judge. You know, there isn't room for me to go, oh, that must be wrong, because I don't know the mind of God. I don't know, like how they work, how it, you know, what the ultimate plan is. I just know that it's better than what I could come up with. Thank goodness.
And it takes it from we're judging according to truth, which is the mind, or which is a set of statements. And do you agree with these, or do you assent to these or not, or whatever? And it takes it to, you know, truth. Our assent to truth becomes a relationship with the person, relationship to truth. And then that, you know, there's a whole lot of different criteria about if someone's pursuing truth or not there. And if somebody is in the truth or not in the truth, you know, it's so different if you take it to a relational level. And it breaks it, doesn't it? You know, you don't have to have a conscious or verbal agreement to a load of assertions
or a creed.
It's about how you're reacting to a person, how you're responding, seeking, and what they're doing back.
It's suddenly the relationship is there. Suddenly it's living. Suddenly it's breathing. Suddenly it's like got life.
James, I'm also thinking there were two thoughts. Maybe we'll go with one first, is where empathy comes into this.
Yeah.
And I think you picked up on it a bit last time, but how what you're saying a lot is kind of seeing the sharedness that we have with all spiritualities, all kind of traditions, and that there's great. And I think what these spiritual traditions do is that they're grappling with fundamentals of existence that we all grapple with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they come with, I was going to say different answers. I don't like using the terms answers because it makes it too nice and pretty. But they come with maybe different words and different ideas around it. And actually coming from a place of empathy, maybe with those questions and getting to what are those fundamentals that they're grappling with and thinking how with, and also seeing the empathy in all seeking. People are seeking here. People are seeking the truth, or seeking how to live well, or seeking how to make sense of this. That's such a different way, and you can't do it if you start from judgment. You can't empathize because they've got to be wrong at the end of the day, and you've got to
That's
get
right.
there.
There isn't any empathy. You've already cut off the empathy to go.
And
they're
you
wrong.
you don't want to share something, because if you share something, then there's an issue with you.
Yeah, that's right. And like, it becomes a very big barrier judgment. I think so. On a practical level, on a day-to-day, real life, everyday sort of living level, something that I found helpful and forget more times than I remember is when I walk down the street, I find it comes so naturally just to judge every single person that I'm walking past. Like, it's I was so habitual. Like, I'll be walking past and see somebody wearing a particular set of trainers or something, and then start judging, oh, they obviously spend their money in this way or that way or the other. I've never met this person in my life, and I'm already making massive assumptions about how they live, how they think, who they are as a person, like morally where they are, where they lie. And I just think, whoa, all of that just because I've seen them, just because like visually I've had a stimulus. So what I found as a really good antidote to that, a really good way of combating it, is just when I'm walking down the street, or like I find prayer easiest when I'm walking or when I'm showering, not at the same time, but certainly when I'm walking along, I find prayer comes quite easily, especially if I'm on my own. And so I'll just like start wishing on them good, wishing good on them, just like any good things I can think of that come into my head, that they will smile today, that they like simple stuff, that they'll have somebody will say something kind to them, that they will say something kind to somebody, that they will feel blessed, that they will feel happy, that they'll feel contentment or compassion, like anything, the words are there, right? You know what it's like when we feel good, and we can wish that on other people, and that for me promotes empathy and suppresses judgment. And suppresses judgment sounds wrong, but like it dissipates the judgment. It helps to take me into a different way of thinking and a different way of viewing people. That's less about who's right and who's wrong, but more about let's all be better. Let's make each other better. If the only thing that I do today is wish that somebody else is better, but like with no ulterior motive, not because I think that they're bad, but I wish them good, wish good on somebody. And I'm using the phrase wish as in like, I pray that this person knows love. I pray that this person knows joy today. I pray that this person knows peace or compassion or whatever. All of those things, and it can be like just one for each person that I see, but the difference it makes in me, the difference that it makes in me when I then next interact with somebody, is unbelievable. I'm suddenly able to see the next person who I interact with, which is probably somebody who's working in a shop because I've gone out shopping or whatever, and just able to see them in a slightly new light and start, and again, just be genuine to them, like genuinely wish them a good day, genuinely wish them like well at the end of the conversation or when I'm talking to them. So it, and I think at the very least what that does, if it doesn't impact anybody else at all, which I can't see how it wouldn't, because it changes me, it changes stuff in my heart, it changes stuff in my head. There's something going on there that's on a spiritual level, that's not on any plane that we can see or understand or fully comprehend or even measure probably. But it then, by it changing me and making me into a kinder person, that will have a knock-on effect. Yeah. That will have an impact, like in reality. So yeah, I think it can only be a good thing. I'd love to remember more often to do it.
Yeah. I think there's a big thing about spiritual practices, and they can be a way of like a judgment, like I've got to do this and this and this, and then I'm okay with God or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But actually, you know, as there's I think it's a Puritan idea of them being means of grace. So they're like vessels that we do by which we receive. And I think they can be so powerful and so simple. You know, what you're describing is so simple, and has a profound effect on our place. And it reminded me of, I remember seeing a talk, and he was talking about spirituality as kind of, we're always in a place of either approaching life and the world and ourselves in a place of fear, or approaching it in a place of faith.
Right. Yeah.
And that sort of conscious spiritual practice is kind of stepping into faith, that other people are okay, that I share connection with other people, that I'm part of this world. You know, it's not this small person saying, oh, I'm not, like kind of judging others so they feel a bit better, and puff, and kind of, there's that idea of pride being puffing up, isn't it? It's kind of it's that, oh, we share this together, and getting that is kind of connections between us. I love that, James. Yeah. And I think that idea of stepping into faith can be such a profound way, as we realize in a situation, oh, am I in fear or faith at this point? How do I step into faith that I belong here, that they belong here, that love is what's the ruler of this world? That's such a hard thing to remember.
Exactly. Yeah, powerful. But it's so worthwhile pursuing it. Is it Henry Nouwen or Henry Nouwen? I can't remember how to pronounce his name.
I wouldn't know.
That came up with, I think it's in the House of the Lord, and he talks about it for his it's like fear and love into the house of love, out of the house of fear. Is one of them. But yeah, again, it's about that moving into a like recognizing in yourself, oh, hang on, it's fear that's feeding me here, as opposed to love that's feeding me here. And what is it? Where are we gaining our energy from? And I like it as well, all of this sort of stuff, because again, as you're saying, you know, it's not like answers, it's a process. There's a process to it. There's a relationship to it. It's not a succeed or fail. It's a process of success. It's a process of improve and being better. And it's not about us being perfect. It's a perfecting, a refining. And I love that, because it means that we're all somewhere along that journey.
Yeah, it takes the judgment again out of it, doesn't it?
Takes the judgment out of it. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Good stuff.
Cool. James, I've really enjoyed this conversation. And I think we're going to bring it to a close, if that's all right.
Absolutely fine. I think
half hour works well for me and my capacities at the end of the day, but also for viewers as well. I'm sure they'll appreciate not having to slog through another half hour. Guys, again, last week I mentioned if you want to join us and talk about your experience with faith, we really love it, or just comment and share it. We'd really love to have that. So do just message me on wherever you found me.
It helps us see the edges of our lenses.
That's it. Yeah, it's another. Yeah, I love it.
Another perspective.
James, is there anything you want to finish on, or anything left?
Not that I can think of, Tom. It's great. I really love this. It's a really good forum and a really good format, and it's just so nice to talk about it, and in such a non-judgmental way.
Great. Okay. Well, have a good week, guys, and we'll see you next week.